Matt Lenihan for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and our Kings. We're here with Dan Rafael. Before we just kick this off, make sure you remember the link will be in the description. Fight Freaks Unite, Dan's newsletter, where you get all the breaking news first. Obviously, we love you to watch Boxing Social, but make sure you subscribe to all Dan's stuff too. Link will be on Twitter as well on the socials when a clip goes out. Dan, how's things over there? Change of scenery for me. I'm sat outside for a change, but the weather's been good for us for once.
Well, when people watch your videos, they see your subject, so they see me, but they don't
I
get a
know.
chance to see you. You don't do the split screen, so they don't see you sitting outside on what looks like the rare,
Quite
beautiful
good.
British weather day.
Very rare, so I thought I'd enjoy it for a change. Look, how's things with you anyway? A lot of news circling and things coming out all the time, but how's things across there?
Dead of summer, man. In terms of boxing, it's not a lot going on right now. You know that. I
Uh,
mean, I think everybody that follows the sport, there's a few fights here and there, but I think a lot of folks are just sort of who are into it. They look ahead for in a few weeks to the Canelo Alvarez, Terrence Crawford fight and all the activities that will go on around that, and then some other
mhm.
more activity as the fall progresses.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a little bit of a lull, but there always seems to be like when boxing's on, and it's normally one after the other, fights on the same night, and then there's this period where it's like, what's going on? But I want to start off on yesterday, a fight that got announced. I saw obviously there was a few bits of back and forth on Twitter, and you've commented on it. Jaron Ennis, 154 pounds, fighting Lima in another sort of title eliminator for the WBA. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of gauged your comments to the fight. It came a bit out of nowhere that I thought that there was going to be he'd either wait for Virgil Ortiz or for whatever's going on with Virgil. But what's your just overall takeaway from this fight that's been put on?
Terrible. You have a guy that has been, and I'm a big Boots fan. That's one of the reasons I'm so irritated by it, because he's such a good talent and he's very enjoyable to watch. He's got a friendly demeanor about him. I mean, there's nothing to dislike about him on a personal level and
Hmm.
in terms of the way that he boxes. But he or his team are doing him a disservice by matching him with a fighter who may not, have a reputation to be well known. Doesn't mean he's no good, but it's just not interesting to the public, in my opinion. Sometimes the organizations order the eliminator, and others they get canvas to make the eliminator, to order the eliminator, to allow the eliminator. And while I don't know 100%, it strikes me that there was some goings on with Team Ennis to seek out an eliminator, to have an organization, asked to do that. They've asked to do that. So maybe that's what happened. But either way, Boots has got the name recognition and the talent level that he can get a title fight or an elimination fight or a good name
Hmm.
without having to go down the eliminator route. So that's the reason. So it feels like it's just sort of like they're looking for cover. Well, we're doing an eliminator. Yeah, well, you didn't really need the eliminator. You can get the title shot anyway. So that's one thing. And the opponent has no real particular accomplishment. They're taking him back home to Philadelphia, to the Wells Fargo Center, where he has fought to good crowds in the past. But at some
Yeah.
point, man, that you're gonna wear out your welcome if you keep bringing in these lesser type of opponents.
What should he have done in your opinion? Who are the pivots that he could have got straight away? Everyone's talking about Virgil Ortiz and that fight potentially going on, we say early next year. But what's the better alternative for him to fight? And
You
I
can
agree with you.
look down the WBC ratings or any of the top ratings, and the 154-pound weight class is probably one of the best weight divisions in the entire sport.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't just go start making cold calls to their promoters and their people. And I guarantee you're going to come up with somebody willing to fight for the money that's better and more recognizable than Lima. So I just find that whole thing farcical when they start screaming about, well, it's an eliminator and it's this and that. There's not a single person on the planet Earth, except maybe Lima's family, that really wanted this fight. Nobody, is interested in this fight. And the reason why it was so irritating is because it came on a day where the UFC announced this gargantuan $7.7 billion deal with Paramount to
Yeah.
end all pay-per-view and bring all their activity to on our country, the national network CBS. It's like the equivalent of going on, ITV or Channel 5 or BBC, like over the air, free, as well as Paramount Plus. I mean, there are a number of events will be on the main CBS, but everything else is on Paramount Plus, one of the streaming services.
Hmm.
And so I juxtapose that where you have a super talent like Ennis just against a nobody. And it's unnecessary. He's coming off the biggest win of his career against Stanionis, a unification fight. And, I'm not going to downplay his victory in that fight, but the people that were like, oh, he has, he can take a tune-up fight. He's moving up to an weight class. I'm like, number one, it's not like Stanionis was anywhere even sniffing the pound-for-pound list, number one. So, yeah, he had a belt, but he kind of backed into it because, like most WBA champions, he was elevated, because of the super nonsense and regular nonsense. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, you know what? When you fight twice a year, fuck tune-ups. If it's one thing if you're going to be active, like, a number of years ago, and guys would fight 4, 5, 6 times a year. You want to slide in, that type of fight, by all means, do your thing and stay active. I think about like this is just one example. I mean, it's a long time ago. I think about Oscar De La Hoya's very famous campaign in like 1999, I want to say it was, where he fought, maybe it was 97, whatever it was. He fought like 5 times in the calendar year, and he had some super fights in there. And then his so-called like soft touch in quote marks, he's fighting like Obakar, you know what I mean? Who's like a really good contender. So, and now you guys, these guys, they fight twice a year and they think, well, I can just do a tune-up fight. Well, your whole career is a tune-up if you're only fighting twice a year.
I was going to say, would he be forgiven if, for instance, he'd say already had, I don't know, 2 or 3 fights already under his belt. He takes this and then has one,
Absolutely,
bang in January. He would have been forgiven for that then.
It's not about forgiveness. It's
but more understanding. Sorry,
100%. I mean, you did the fight against Stanionis. You had some momentum after that victory, and now you come back, however many months later, and against an opponent that is as obscure as can be. And once again, I'm not even saying that the opponent's no good, but there's nothing in the resume that would tell you that this is a formidable opponent. It just feels so cynical. Now, you asked about Virgil Ortiz. Now, Ortiz and Ennis, if you heard Oscar De La Hoya speaking during an interview on DAZN during his card that was recently between, we did the card up in Chicago with Duarte and Kenneth Sims. He talked about wanting to make that fight and hope they could do it in the early part of next year. So what they're endeavoring to do, it's my understanding, is Boots is going to have this fight against Lima that will take place October 11th. Sometime probably in October, perhaps November, you'll see Virgil Ortiz back in the ring against hopefully a reputable opponent. I know they're talking about like a Keith Thurman, that type of thing, which is certainly a lot better than Lima.
That's fair enough. Keith
now,
Thurman.
And if both of the guys are the winners of their fights, then they hope to make that match for the first quarter of the first part of next year. And that's obviously a very major fight in the 154-pound weight class. But when you know that, when you don't know that that's done, it makes the so-called tune-up a lot less appetizing. I'll give you an example. Again, I'll use Oscar De La Hoya. When he was getting ready to fight Julio Cesar Chavez for the first time, huge fight. They fought together on a doubleheader against, very, very weak opposition. But at least everybody knew, like, these guys are staying fresh, they're staying ready, and they're fighting each other, a few months later. That is, I think, a lot more palatable, a lot more acceptable to boxing fans than when you go into this type of matchup against Lima with the uncertainty of what's next.
Yep. It's a fair enough point. Something that caught my eye last night, I know you said, you might not necessarily have seen the post, but I saw the video. Andre Ward for many years has sort of always, I think, half teased a comeback, whether it be promo for something new he's doing, he's sort of half hinted, or he's sharing little bits of sparring or who he's still sparring with and doing all this kind of stuff. He mentioned he would be open to fighting Anthony Joshua, Wembley Stadium, and that would be something that would intrigue him, etc. Anthony Joshua has fired back in the comments. Anthony Joshua was active last night on Instagram, and he responded straight away and just put payday, payday, and in brackets, Canelo voice. And he said, actually, I've just sent you, Jay Prince, Eddie Hearn's contact. So when you look at, obviously, how long he's been out retired, but a lot of people wanting the Anthony Joshua smoke. And look, what do you make of it?
I guess you got Andre calling out Joshua. Obviously, we know what's going on as the possibility of him and Jake Paul, which I find to be utterly laughable. Look, I understand. I mean, Andre, he's a competitive guy. He was a great fighter for a long time, a Hall of Famer. One of the rare fighters, at least in terms of an elite fighter, who retired undefeated. A long time, top 2 or 3 or 4 pound for pound guys. Some had him number 1 for a period of time. Olympic gold medal. Unified the titles at super middleweight. Became the light heavyweight champion and also unified in that division. and walked away on a knockout victory against Kovalev. Winning for the second time. A lot of people thought he lost the first fight, but he certainly left no doubt in the rematch. But the point is, he hasn't fought since around summer of 2017, so it's been quite a long time. And he retired. I know he thought about coming back, but my understanding was that at the end it was about, I have these injuries or certain things I just can't overcome to my satisfaction to be where I was when I was at my best, and so it's better to just stay retired and not come back and all that. But like every fighter, they're fighters at heart. They get restless. They want to scratch that itch. They see what's going on in the sport. And one thing about Andre is that he has stayed in some fashion connected to the sport. So he sees what's going on. He spent a number of years commentating for HBO in his retirement. He did the same for a number of years for ESPN. And even though he's no longer, doing regular commentary gigs, he still pays attention. I see what he does on his social media. He's doing his interviews and involved with the podcast and this and that. So, and if you're going to come back, right, you don't want to come back against just a nobody. You want to do it in a big event, make a splash, make a lot of money and all that. So, but Joshua, I mean, he may be diminished at this point, but, he's a man that's about 50 pounds heavier. Obviously, if Andre retired as a 175 pounder and Anthony is 240-ish. In the ring, I mean, that's a lot of difference in size. To me, it's more fantasy than anything that's real.
To me, when you think about, like you said, 2017, if you'd have said this in 2018, you look and go,
that's different, man. That's different.
Let's maybe run that, because he had so much talent, and you look at Joshua and you go, you know what? If anyone could step up in weight and manage it, but look, he stepped up in weight. The first fight with Kovalev was very tricky, no matter what people think. The second fight, look, he put an exclamation mark on it. But with his talent, there would have been that what if. Whereas now, because it's been such a long period of time,
time waits for nobody, my man. You know that it's a young man's game, and at that time, as you mentioned, if it's like that 2018-ish, it's the light heavyweight champ against the heavyweight champ. Like, there's lots of precedents for that in the history of boxing, where the light heavyweight champion fights the heavyweight champion. So that would, I think as people still would have considered a physical mismatch, because back, decades and decades ago, the heavyweight champ was like, 210 and the light heavyweight champ is 175. I mean, it's still quite a bit of weight, but it wasn't that the heavyweight champ was 250 or 240, and 6'4" or 6'5". I mean, it was a whole different situation at that time. If you take a look at Bob Foster standing next to Joe Frazier, like, they look about the same size, because one was the light heavyweight champ, one was the heavyweight champ, but they weren't separated by that much in terms of just their physical stature. You take Andre Ward and you stand him on a podium next to Anthony Joshua, you're going to see a stark difference in the way that they look physically.
Sort of, I think the final one for me, but I want to touch on it. The young heavyweight from the UK goes, Moses Itauma, returns this Saturday against Dillian Whyte. I have to say as well, one thing that's taken me back, and not that they shouldn't be in shape, but I've not seen Dillian Whyte in this kind of shape for many a year, even going back to a Joseph Parker. Normally, look, he does come in a little bit heavy sometimes. He looks like he's had a proper camp. But this, what many people are thinking, is a little bit of a coming out party for what people are thinking is going to be one of the future stars of the heavyweight division in Moses Itauma. How impressed have you been with this young man up to press?
Well, he's looked good in his fights. He's done everything he's supposed to do. He scored a ton of knockouts. I mean, the thing that stands out to me is when you look at him, he's 12-0 with 10 knockouts going into the fight. He only has 25 total professional rounds. But the thing that's amazing about that is he has 2 6-round distance fights. So of his total amount of rounds as a professional, almost half of them are just from 2 fights early on. Everything else has been KO1, KO2. So he's not being extended by anybody. Now, he hasn't really fought anybody. The one fight that you have to look at and definitely be impressed by the way he took care of business was the Dempsey-McKean fight. Not because McKean is some great fighter necessarily, but he's a very big man, definitely has punching power, and did go, I forget if it was the 11th round or the 12th round with Filip Hrgović, and gave him a tough fight. He got stopped, but Hrgović at that time, undefeated, top contender, Olympic medalist, and he took him really deep in a solid fight. And Moses walked through him like he was, a piece of newspaper, and just got him out of there in the first round. So that made you jump up and say, okay, this kid looks good. Plus, he's a southpaw. And
Mm.
so from the fighting standpoint, you're like, okay, this is a chance to shine. Everybody looks at his age. He's only 20 years old. A lot of comparisons, unfair in my opinion, to Mike Tyson, which,
Yeah.
other than the age, they don't fight anything alike.
Not remote, not remotely. I don't. You
Yeah,
know what? The only thing that people have dined out on, and look, I get it, and you've got to, is at the time they were saying, could he possibly try and break that record of this, and this? But that was the only similarity. When you look at how they fought, I don't see it. I'm not doubting that he can do maybe certain things, but we've not seen that kind of thing yet. So,
yeah.
but
But it's
an
no, I was going to say,
interesting
just
fight.
it's a really interesting matchup. You mentioned about Dillian Whyte being in shape. Well, I would hope he would get himself in the best possible, not only physically but mentally, in terms of preparing for the fight. Because I think at his age, 37, he
Mm-hmm.
knows that this is probably they. I mean, look, I'm not Dylan White's no dummy. He knows that they've
They
got him for
picked
this
him.
fight because they handpicked him as a guy with a very good reputation for being a quality heavyweight for a long time, who they think is definitely past his best days, who they can help make a name for Moses Itauma off of a reputable heavyweight like Dillian Whyte, who's fought a lot of
Mm-hmm.
top opponents. Now, when he's fought the top opponents, though, Povetkin, Anthony Joshua a decade ago, and obviously Tyson Fury for the heavyweight title, what do they all have in common? He got knocked out in all three of those fights.
Mm.
So they look at Moses' power and his youth and his speed and his southpaw style and just his let's call it youthful exuberance against an older, faded guy who's been
Yeah.
somewhat inactive. Although he's won 3 fights in a row, and by the way, the 3 fights in a row that he won they weren't like superstar level wins, but they were not against guys that were 13 and 25. He was beating pretty solid heavyweight type guys, second tier contenders, maybe third tier, but guys that you've seen in the ring with other experienced fighters. Jermaine Franklin, for example, that's a good victory for him.
Yeah.
So they just think that this is where the rubber hits the road. It's time to find out what Moses Itauma is all about, and who the heck knows when they get in there and they start swinging. I'll tell you right now, if Dillian Whyte knocked him out, I wouldn't be shocked. And if Moses Itauma ran through him, with ease, I wouldn't be surprised. If they had a slugfest for, the distance, it wouldn't be a shock. It's one of those fights where it's like, who in the world knows how it's going to go? That said, I think you suspect that Itauma gets the job done with that punching power.
I think you have to lean towards a town just purely based on the last 3 or 4 years, maybe of Dillian's career. I mean, it's not the run that he was on previously, and inactivity and other things going on outside the ring. But there's so many questions, and that's what makes for a good fight, I feel like.
And I was like interested in the fight just when it was made, just because of the fact of the things we're just talking about. Not to mention it's got a good undercard to go along with it. But my own personal interest was a little more piqued because I had an opportunity in the last week to have an interview with Moses that's on our Big Fight Weekend Fight Freaks Unite podcast. And first time I'd ever interviewed Moses, a very reserved, I found to be well-spoken, well-thoughtful,
Yeah.
intelligent, and sort of understands the hype, but doesn't seem too caught up in it, right? He seems very grounded, especially impressive to me for a guy that's only 20 years old. I was not that grounded at age 20, I'll tell you that.
No, look, I think I've interviewed him a handful of times. I was speaking to Gareth A. Davis because we interviewed him. It was like a joint interview with him and Gareth, and he's so level headed for someone that age because you know yourself, you see all the colourful characters coming out, and I think maybe a lot in America as well. Everyone can talk well, and you almost think if you can fight like you can talk, fucking hell, you're going to be a good fighter. But
Right.
he's very much like, look, I'm under no illusions. I'm not the finished article. I've a long way to go, and it's like it's not media training. I think it's just his mentality, and I think that's nice and refreshing for someone who's coming through who's not had to shout, scream, and maybe use profanity. Don't get me wrong; everybody likes a bit of like excitement outside the ring, but he's so cold with it that it's like we'll see what happens. But
if it turns out that he actually has the goods in the ring, and he does get rid of Dillian Whyte and does so impressively, and he continues to have the type of mentality and the attitude and what I found to be sort of a good-natured kind of guy, he can become a big star in boxing. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's going to have the UK behind him. They got some of the best fans in the world in the UK. They're amazingly supportive of their big time fighters, and they don't have to be heavyweights. I mean, your people they'll come out and support if you're a top flyweight. I mean, you see the crowds that can turn out for some of those fights. So he's in a wonderful position now. It's just a matter of can he seize the day. And is
Absolutely.
Dillian Whyte going to pay for it?
We'll soon see, but we'll find out Saturday. Dan, I appreciate that. We've covered all the major things I wanted to touch on. I'm probably will. I don't know when I'm back in the States. I was half tempted to go to the Boots fight. We'll see. Um,
Oh, you're not
I'm
gonna go to that
no,
fight.
no. I might do. I like to have every show covered. So
You coming for Canelo Crawford or what?
yeah. But you know what? On the same night, and this is really annoying. I'm not using it as to be comparable because it's definitely not. But there's another fight that's happening in Belfast the same night,
Mm-hmm.
and that fight, the atmosphere there for that one as well. I'm so gutted it's on the same night. Don't get me wrong, I've already gone to one place, so it's already been planned. But when I hear that's on the same day, I'm like,
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing, but
the atmosphere
it's
for
not
that.
quite the same. It's I mean, no disrespect to what they're going to do in that
Yeah,
fight. For that's actually for Boots' old title, the
Crocker and
IBF
yeah,
welterweight title between was it Crocker and
Crocker and
Donovan.
Donovan. Yeah,
But it's not quite the level of what they did just a few weeks ago. When on the same day you had Manny Pacquiao's comeback, you had the heavyweight championship between Usyk and Dubois,
fuck
and
them.
oh by the way, you also had
Bam.
Bam Rodriguez and a unification fight with Cafu, all on the same day. That was just, and then here we are in the middle of August where we have a weekend. We've had weekends. Itauma is this weekend, but last weekend there was absolutely nothing. I mean, and they just do a bad job of the powers that be of sort of trying to spread things out. I mean, it was just, to me anyway, just ridiculous
Yeah,
that the heavyweight championship of the world and the return of Manny Pacquiao are separated by a couple of hours on the same day. And that's one thing if they're on the same day. I mean, okay, fine, you watch two things, but they were both on pay-per-view. What do they expect? Not everybody's going to buy two pay-per-views on the same day. And then on top of that, you got a great young pound for pound guy like Bam Rodriguez in one of the more significant fights of his career. And that fight was taking place at basically the exact same time as the Pacquiao fight. So for somebody like myself who would have spent a lot of time and attention on the Bam fight, I couldn't do that over the Pacquiao fight. So I didn't even see the Bam fight till after it was over and wrote about it like a follow up like a couple of days later. They just make it impossible. And then here we are in August with, other than Moses this weekend and that card, there's basically nothing for a couple of weeks. So
yeah.
they got to figure that shit out.
Sooner rather than later because it's getting irritating. But you know, it's work and it's good, and but it's a privilege, so it is what it is. Look, be looking forward to catching up with you again very soon. And everyone, obviously, make sure you click the link in our description and on the social media clip that goes out on Twitter. Appreciate it, Dan, for jumping on. You're always willing, so thank you very much.
You bet, Matt. My pleasure.